My name is Selena Hart, and I'm 35 years old. For over a decade, I've been my family's silent financier, the invisible hand that paid the bills, solved the emergencies, and made life just a little more comfortable for everyone, except myself. As a successful investment advisor in Chicago's competitive financial sector, I built everything from scratch. No inheritance, no shortcuts, just sleepless years, relentless work, and the hope that if I gave enough, just maybe I'd finally be seen. But I never was. I grew up in the long shadows of my older sister Monica and my younger brother Lucas. Monica, the flawless one, was the family jewel, always dressed to perfection, always praised, always adored. Lucas was the golden boy, the only son who could burn down the kitchen and still get a hug for trying. Me, I was the responsible one, the family's plan B. When Monica barely passed college, she got a graduation party with a custom cake and champagne. When I graduated summa cum laude in economics, my parents said, "Well, of course, that's expected of you." Selena, that expectation followed me into adulthood. It crept into every phone call that began with small talk and ended with a Venmo request. When Monica needed money for her destination wedding, I paid the venue deposit without blinking. When Lucas wanted to start a game-changing wellness app, I transferred $12,000 he burned through in 3 months. No repayment, no gratitude, only silence until the next crisis. Still, when my parents announced their 45th anniversary celebration, something inside me fluttered. Maybe this would be different. My mother called me one morning unusually cheerful. "We're thinking of doing it at Delamere." She said, "A 5-star rooftop restaurant in the heart of downtown. It's going to be elegant. Just family and close friends. We'll need help with the deposit." I wired $20,000 that afternoon. The week before the event, I bought a black evening gown, sleek and understated. I had my hair done in soft curls and wore the emerald necklace my grandmother once told me brought out my strength. I arrived at Delamere early, holding a gift box wrapped in silver paper with a navy satin ribbon inside. A set of luxury watches my father had once admired. I told the hostess, "I'm here for the Hart anniversary party." She blinked. "Name's Selena Hart. I'm their daughter." Her fingers hovered over her tablet. Her face faltered. "I'm sorry, you're not on the guest list." I felt my stomach drop. "That must be a mistake. I paid for this party." She whispered something to the event coordinator, who reappeared moments later with my father in tow. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask why I was there. He simply glanced at the gift in my hand, then at the guard behind him and said, "Get this beggar out of here." And just like that, I was escorted from the party I paid for, uninvited in every way that counted. I don't remember how I made it to my car. I just know I was holding the gift box like a lifeline, like if I gripped it tightly enough, maybe the night wouldn't be real. But the elevator doors had already closed behind me, sealing off the laughter, the champagne, the family celebration I had financed but wasn't welcome at. I had been removed, erased, like an error on a receipt. When I finally reached the parking garage, I sat in my car for a long time. I didn't cry at first. My body just refused to move. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft ticking of the engine cooling and the rustle of wrapping paper as the box on the seat shifted. Then it hit me, not just the humiliation, but the years behind it. The slow burn of being tolerated but never embraced. The tears came without warning, hard and fast. I wept like a child, mascara running down my cheeks, the curls in my hair wilting under the weight of grief I didn't know I'd been carrying. When my phone rang, I was still slumped in the driver's seat. I didn't want to answer. But when I saw the name Janelle, I pressed the green button with trembling fingers. "Hey, Sel, how's the big party? Did they finally roll out the red carpet for you?" I tried to speak but only managed a jagged breath. "Selena," she asked, a voice sharpening. "Are you crying? What happened?" "They kicked me out," I whispered. "They told security to remove me. My dad called me a beggar." There was a long silence on the line. "I'm coming over. Don't move. 20 minutes. She arrived in 15. When Janelle found me in the car, she didn't ask questions. She opened the passenger door, moved the gift box to the back seat, and climbed in beside me. She pulled me into a hug so tight and fierce that something inside me cracked. I told her everything in broken pieces, my name not on the guest list, the hostess, the security guard, my father's voice cutting through the lobby like a blade. They used me. I said, I paid for the whole thing, and they made sure I wasn't invited. Janelle's jaw clenched. Those manipulative parasites. You're not a person to them, you're a bank account with legs. They're my family, I murmured. No, family doesn't humiliate you. Family doesn't throw you out of a room you paid to be in. We eventually made it upstairs. Janelle helped me out of the black gown, peeled off my heels, and wiped away the remnants of my ruined makeup. She poured us both glasses of red wine and ordered Thai food from my favorite place without asking. I've kept track of every dollar, I said suddenly. Every transfer, every payment, every emergency. It's all documented. Good, she said. Then let's see it. I opened my laptop and pulled up my financial records. Under the category Family Support, I had been logging transactions for 10 years. Janelle sat beside me as I ran a full report. The number stared back at us, $342, 785.19. She blinked. That's a house. It's my 20s, I said hollowly. It's my vacations I never took. It's the kids I may never have because I was too busy solving other people's problems. We scrolled through the list. Lucas's food truck, Monica's honeymoon upgrade, Dad's overdue property taxes, Mom's bridge work, and not a single repayment, not a single act of gratitude. That's when I noticed a new batch of charges pending on my card. $4.800 additional catering, $3.100. Open bar package, $950. Cake from La Glace Boutique. They're still using my card, I whispered. Even tonight. They just kept adding to the bill. Janelle leaned in. They threw you out, but they let your credit card stay. We fell into silence. The wine sat untouched now. My head ached from the crying, but my heart ached more from something deeper, disbelief giving way to cold clarity. They don't love me, I said. They love what I do for them. Janelle didn't argue. She didn't soften the blow. She simply nodded. And you know what, Sel, she said gently. You don't have to keep paying for a seat at a table that was never built for you. I looked at the spreadsheet again. Then I looked at her. I'm done, I said. She tilted her head. I mean it. No more payments, no more loans, no more pretending if I just do one more thing. I'll finally belong. Janelle smiled. Not in triumph, but in solidarity. You just bought back your life. Selena. With interest. The decision was made in a whisper, but it echoed through every corner of my life. I'm done. I had told Janelle the night before, and in the quiet hours of the morning, as the first light filtered through my apartment window, that whisper turned into action. I woke up with the kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years, not the adrenaline-fueled kind that comes with panic or rage, but a calm, calculated stillness. I brewed coffee, tied my hair into a low bun, and opened my laptop at the kitchen counter like I was preparing for a Monday meeting. Only this time, the business at hand was my freedom. The first thing I did was open a new spreadsheet. I titled it plainly, Termination Plan, Family Financial Dependencies. At the top, I listed the most urgent pending obligations, $12,000. Alaska anniversary cruise departure 6 weeks from now. $8,500 Disneyland trip for Monica and her family. $1,500 business seed loan for Lucas. $2,200 country club renewal for my parents. $18,000 deposit for Delamere already paid. I had funded nearly $62,000 worth of commitments, none of which had been acknowledged, let alone repaid. I stared at the number for a long time, letting it sink in. This wasn't just money. This was time, identity, self-worth. This was my silence, monetized. Next, I texted Camille, my executive assistant. She'd worked with me for nearly 6 years and knew more about my family's demands than she probably ever wanted to. Me, Camille. I need help with something personal. Can you come by the apartment at 10, bring your laptop? Camille, absolutely. Everything okay? Me. Not yet, but it will be. By the time she arrived, I had printed the spreadsheet. highlighted the active commitments, and prepared a list of phone numbers, booking codes, and account information. Camille raised an eyebrow when she saw the documents. "Is this all family?" I nodded. "Every cent. I had no idea it was this much." She murmured, "What do you want to do? Cancel everything." Together, we got to work. The cruise line was first. I spoke with a customer service rep, gave them the reservation code, and requested immediate cancellation. "There will be a fee for the late change." The rep said, "That's fine. I'll take the refund on the balance. And no need to notify the passengers. I'll handle that." Next was the Disneyland trip. That one stung because I knew my niece and nephew had been looking forward to it. But the memory of Monica brushing past me in the restaurant lobby without a glance reminded me that guilt had no place here. I called the travel agency and canceled the package. When asked for a reason, I simply replied, "Change of circumstances." Lucas's business account came next. Since it was technically under my name set up during one of his many visionary phases, I contacted the bank and froze the funds before he could access them. He had never submitted a formal business plan, nor used the account for anything legitimate. The country club was the easiest. A brief call and a polite "we won't be renewing the Hart family membership this year" did the trick. When all was done, Camille leaned back and let out a low whistle. "You've just unplugged a whole network of dependency. And I'm not done yet," I said, pulling out the final document, a statement of donation. I had decided to redirect the Delamere deposit, the $18,000 that had bought me public humiliation, to something far more worthy, a donation to Seattle Children's Hospital, made anonymously. I called the restaurant and asked to speak with the event manager. "I'm not disputing the initial deposit," I said calmly, "but I'd like the amount to be converted into a charitable contribution under my name, but listed as anonymous." There was a pause. "That's highly unusual, Miss Hart, but we can arrange that. Thank you." Then came the final step. I wrote an auto-response email and programmed it to trigger at 5:00 p.m. "For all messages or calls from my immediate family, subject financial support discontinued message. All financial services previously provided by Selena Hart have been permanently discontinued. No further inquiries will be responded to." Camille read it and smiled. Simple, cold, clear. I like it. When 5:01 arrived, my phone began to vibrate. Missed call from Dad. Text from Monica. "Did something happen to the Disney tickets?" Email from Lucas. "The bank froze the account." What the hell? Cell voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. I didn't listen. I didn't reply. I just poured a glass of wine, curled up on my sofa, and looked out the window at the city I had built my life in without their help, without their love. And now, finally, without their chains. They were just beginning to feel the absence I had lived in for years. The silence of the night before didn't last. By morning, the storm arrived, fists pounding on my front door, angry voices echoing through the hallway. My family had found out when I stood at the threshold in my robe, hair still damp from the shower, heart steady. Through the peephole, I saw all of them, my father's face flushed crimson. Monica's arms crossed in fury, Lucas pacing with frantic energy, and my mother glaring as if I had just burned down the house she'd never invited me into. I opened the door. "What is the meaning of this?" my father thundered, stepping inside without so much as a greeting. The others followed, forming a tight semicircle in my living room, as if surrounding a criminal. "You canceled the Disney trip," Monica hissed. "Jack and Emma have been looking forward to it for months. The cruise company called us," my mother added, her voice trembling not from sadness, but from the sheer inconvenience. "They said our reservation was voided. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is, Lucas?" "Of course," was the loudest. "You froze my business account. Selena, I had payments to make. You've destroyed my credibility." I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "Good morning to you too." "This isn't a joke," my father snapped. "You will fix this. Now." "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it stopped them all in their tracks. "No," Monica repeated, like she'd just heard a foreign language. "That's right," I said, voice firm. "No more explanations. No more apologies. No more money. You're clearly having a breakdown." My mother spat. "This isn't you. Selena, you're unstable, Monica added. This is why you're always alone. I'll sue you, Lucas threatened. That loan was promised to me. My father stepped closer, towering over me like he used to when I was a child. You will undo this mess, or you're no longer part of this family. I let out a soft laugh, not bitter, just exhausted. Not part of the family, I said. When was I ever? They stared at me, uncomprehending. I walked to my desk, picked up the thick envelope I had prepared the night before, and handed it to my father. In that folder, you'll find an itemized breakdown of every cent I've given this family over the last 10 years, every mortgage payment, every medical bill, every failed business venture, plus interest, plus opportunity cost. He looked down at the numbers. His hand trembled slightly. Monica leaned over his shoulder and gasped audibly. You're being dramatic, my mother said after a pause. This is family. We don't keep score. No. Mom, I said, you just expect me to keep paying while pretending I don't notice. My father slammed the document on the table. You're exaggerating. It wasn't that much. I pulled out my phone and tapped on a voice memo. The recording played loud and clear. Get this beggar out of here. The voice was unmistakable, my father's, sharp and cold, echoing in my living room just as it had in that marble lobby. A long silence followed. Even Lucas didn't speak. Heather's expression flickered with guilt. My mother's eyes narrowed. You're taking things out of context. I shook my head. No, I've been doing that for years, making excuses, translating your silence into love. But not anymore. Lucas raised his voice again. After everything we've done for you, I looked at him. Name one thing. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I'm not paying for anything anymore, I said to all of them. No loans, no deposits, no emergencies. You are adults, you figure it out. My father scoffed. You always say that. And then you come crawling back. You don't have the spine to follow through. You're wrong. I replied. This time, I have something more valuable than your approval, my self-respect. My mother let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You're being selfish. After all we've sacrificed. What sacrifices, I asked, genuinely curious. Tell me, when did you ever show up for me? When I graduated? When I opened my firm? When I spent Christmas alone because you forgot to invite me? Their silence was deafening. You need help, Monica muttered. You're clearly not well. I agree. I said. I started therapy last week. I let the words settle before continuing. My therapist has a name for what you've been doing, financial abuse. That's absurd, my father snapped. We're your family. No, you needed my money, never me. The conversation spiraled from there. Accusations, denials, thinly veiled threats, my character, my mental health, my emotional stability all dragged into question. But this time, I didn't flinch. I kept repeating my boundaries with quiet resolve, letting their chaos bounce off me like rain on a window. Eventually, they realized they weren't getting anywhere. This isn't over, my father muttered as they turned toward the door. You'll regret this. I already regret the last 10 years, I said calmly, but I won't regret today. At the doorway, my mother paused. What will people think? Selena, that you abandoned your family? I looked her dead in the eye. What did they think when they watched you have me thrown out of a party I paid for? She had no answer. When the door finally clicked shut, I stood in the quiet and let out a slow, steady breath. I should have felt shattered, but instead, I felt clean, like something toxic had finally left my bloodstream. The confrontation had been brutal, but necessary, and for the first time in my life, I was standing on solid ground. The door had barely closed behind them when I realized something profound. Their power over me was gone. Not just the financial leash they had tugged for years, but the emotional one, too. They couldn't guilt me anymore, couldn't shame me into giving, couldn't convince me to betray myself for scraps of affection. I had finally walked out of the storm, and now I was standing in the sun. The days that followed felt like clearing out a room I didn't know had grown so dark. I deleted voicemails without listening. I let the text messages pile up and expire like spoiled fruit. My focus shifted back to work, real work, the kind that had always made me come alive. Without the constant financial hemorrhaging, I had more resources, more energy, more vision. I took on 2 new major clients, hired another junior analyst, and launched a financial wellness seminar for young women entrepreneurs. A few weeks later, an industry magazine named me one of Chicago's top 40 advisors under 40. For once, I didn't forward the article to anyone. I printed it and pinned it to my office wall for me. Still, healing doesn't happen in spreadsheets and press features. It happens in slow, quiet places. One of those places was a support group I stumbled upon one evening, hosted in the basement of a community center on the north side. The flyer read, "Survivors of Family-Based Financial Abuse." I almost walked past it, but something pulled me in. There were 9 of us in the circle that first night: teachers, engineers, artists, a retired nurse. All of us had a story. All of us had once mistaken manipulation for love. There was Alana, whose brother had drained her retirement fund. Desiree, who had co-signed loans for her mother and lost her home. And Thomas, a gentleman in his 60s who had spent 20 years supporting a family that never invited him to his own niece's wedding. We didn't give advice. We gave witness. We listened, nodded, cried sometimes. There was power in being seen. After years of pretending I was okay, I could finally say they hurt me, but I'm still here. That November, I hosted my first Friendsgiving. The idea came to me over morning coffee as I looked out at the city skyline and thought, what if I filled my home with people who actually wanted me, not what I could give them? Janelle was the first to RSVP. Camille and her husband came, bringing homemade stuffing and a bottle of wine. Alana brought her famous cornbread. Thomas arrived with a pumpkin pie and a shy smile that broke into a grin when he saw how warmly he was welcomed. Desiree showed up last, carrying a pot of gumbo and wearing the most radiant gold earrings I'd ever seen. My apartment was filled with warmth, laughter, and the delicious chaos of people who valued one another not for their usefulness, but for their presence. Near the end of the night, my Aunt Clara appeared quiet, hesitant, carrying an envelope. "I should have given you this years ago," she said softly, pulling me aside into the kitchen. "Your grandmother asked me to, but your mother convinced me to wait until you were more stable." She made air quotes when she said it. My throat tightened. Inside the envelope was a letter and a bank statement. I unfolded the letter slowly, as if my hands already knew what they were about to receive. "My dearest Selena, you have always been the quiet strength in a noisy room. I saw that in you when you were 5 and again when you were 25. I saw how hard you tried to belong to a family that never truly made space for you. I want you to know I saw you. This inheritance is yours, separate from what I left the others. They don't know about it. Use it to build a life that's truly yours, one that no one can take credit for. When you finally choose yourself, Clara will know to give you this letter. With all my love, Grandma Eleanor." I looked at the statement. A trust in my name, $180,000, untouched, accumulating interest for 7 years. She knew. I whispered. She always knew. Clara nodded, her eyes misting. She was nobody's fool, and neither are you. The room behind us hummed with laughter and music. My people, my chosen family. And in that moment, I knew blood alone doesn't define who you belong to. It never has. Since cutting ties, my parents had downsized. Lucas's latest startup had failed within weeks of losing my backing. Monica's husband postponed their kitchen renovation indefinitely. From what Rebecca, my cousin, told me, my name had been scrubbed from their family photos like I was a stain. I had been written out of their wills, their group chats, and their holiday plans. But strangely, it didn't hurt. It felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for years. Because what I gained was far greater: peace, self-respect, and for the first time in my adult life, a sense that I belonged not to a role, or a function, or a checkbook, but to myself. I chose my family now, and they chose me back. 6 months had passed since Aunt Clara placed that envelope into my hands, the one that whispered, "She saw you when no one else had." In that time, I had begun to build a life that finally felt like mine. A life no longer built on obligation, on performance, on the hollow currency of approval. And just when I thought I'd turned the page for good, the past came knocking once more. It arrived in the form of a message, An unassuming text from my father, short and strangely civil. Your mother and I will be at Lakeshore Cafe tomorrow at 2. We'd like to talk. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a summons like old times. But this wasn't old times. I discussed it with Dr. Ahmed, my therapist. What do you want from this conversation? She asked gently. Clarity, I answered. Maybe closure, but definitely not reconciliation on their terms. I agreed to the meeting with clear boundaries, public place. 30-minute limit. No discussion of money. I arrived on time, dressed in navy slacks and a soft wool coat, neither armor nor performance. Just myself. They were already seated. My father looked smaller than I remembered. My mother wore a smile I'd once craved, but now saw for what it was. A mask. Selena, she said, too brightly. You look healthy? I nodded, sat down, and waited. The conversation began like any other small talk: weather, traffic, the state of the world. My father made a half-hearted joke. My mother mentioned a neighbor who'd passed away. I said nothing about my work, my foundation, or the people who had filled my life since the separation. At the 25-minute mark, she finally reached across the table. We miss you, she said. I held her gaze. Do you miss me or what I gave you? She blinked, her hand retracting. My father cleared his throat. We've had to make some adjustments, he admitted. It hasn't been easy. I imagine not, I said simply. Your niece and nephew ask about you, my mother added, trying again, especially during the holidays. They're welcome in my home, I said softly, without conditions and without their parents. She stiffened. That's not how families work. I tilted my head. That's exactly how boundaries work. They looked at each other. The air between us grew dense not with anger, but with the weight of unspoken years. My father stood first. We should go, he muttered. Then turning to me, think about what family really means. I smiled, not coldly, not cruelly, just enough. I have, every day since I left, and I watched them walk away. That evening, I hosted my annual winter gathering in the same apartment where I had once sat in silence and shame. The space glowed with soft lights and laughter. Janelle brought spiced cider. Thomas had finally published his memoir and signed copies for everyone. Camille danced with her toddler to old jazz records. Alana, radiant in silver, toasted to new chapters and real love. We weren't bound by blood. We were bound by truth, by choice, and in every warm face, I saw the kind of family I had once begged for but had now built. Later, as the night mellowed and guests settled into stories and quiet conversations, I stepped into my small study, lit only by a reading lamp. I opened the drawer where I had placed my grandmother's letter and reread the last lines, "Use it to build the life you deserve," one that no one can take credit for. I had, and I was still building it. The foundation now carried a new mission. Using a portion of the inheritance, I'd launched the Second Light Fund, a scholarship for young adults estranged from their families, especially those cut off financially for choosing authenticity over conformity. The applications had poured in, each story a mirror of mine in some small, aching way. I couldn't fix their pasts, but I could help illuminate their path forward. Just before midnight, I returned to the living room. The last of the guests were preparing to leave, reluctant to break the circle we had formed. Hugs were exchanged. Laughter echoed one last time. And then it was just me. Standing in the quiet, I turned off the lights, one by one, until only the city glowed beyond the windows. Chicago's skyline humming in the distance, steady and sure. I walked to the window. The reflection looking back at me wasn't a daughter pleading for love or a sister offering proof of worth. It was just a woman whole, calm, and no longer waiting to be invited in. In the end, I learned something no applause could ever teach me, that your worth isn't measured by who accepts you or what you give them. It lives in the quiet decisions, the hard boundaries, the honest mirrors. I no longer seek permission to shine. I stood up, turned off the final lamp, and closed the door behind me gently, but without looking back. Because dignity, once reclaimed, does not ask to be acknowledged. It simply walks forward, unshaken.